There's been an interesting thought that's crossed my mind, and what that thought has centered around the idea of what vegans go through in America, right? I'm not vegan myself, but the concept to me seemed pretty out there. But those products that are vegan based, right? What if you were to find out that those products actually weren't truly vegan? The products were fake, right? They were faking that they were vegan the entire time. Well, this video is actually titled "How Americans Are Tricked into Buying Fake Food," right? So gluten-free food, you see gluten-free slapped on food in America. You see, all these different things that cater to different groups of people. And you see like the standard stuff that we all use, cooking oils, different types of breads, things that we engage with all the time. But a lot of the ingredients in that make the product something entirely different than what we think we're purchasing. So that's what we're going to be diving into today, man. Subscribe if you're new, and let's go. Give me some new suggestions if you can.
So you think this is olive oil, right?
Oh shit, that's not good.
Wrong. Well, maybe some of it is, but this is actually a classic example of food fraud.
Extra virgin olive oils are being switched out with cheap ones.
What? Bro, I use olive oil all the time. I mean, not now, but I used to use olive oil all the time. I used it with everything. It's healthier than butter.
And fraudulent to sell something labeled as something else.
Wow.
Why is this fish being mislabeled?
Your Parmesan cheese products do not contain any Parmesan cheese.
This video about to make me mad, bro. This video about to make me mad, bro.
There was no one brand that stood out as completely safe.
Wow, so we can't eat anything.
I guarantee you, anytime a product...
It's because the whole objective in America is to make as much money as possible by any means necessary at the expense of other people's health.
Can be passed off as something more expensive, it will be. It's that simple.
Counterfeits, dilution, substitution, and mislabeling.
Wow,
food fraud
dude.
not only harms consumers' wallets, it puts their health and safety at risk.
We might not know the overall impact of food fraud because so much of what fraudsters do is hidden from us and has been for centuries.
A lot of things are hidden from us, man. I mean, things the government does are hidden from us. Things that food companies, organizations in general, like Big Pharma, a lot of that is hidden from us. I'm pretty sure you guys have probably seen this article at some point, but there are cures for cancer. There are. It's not even like a speculation anymore. There are cures for common cancers these days. Not every cancer, but common cancers. And, why isn't that made publicly available to most people and stuff? Obviously, if you think about it, if there's a big pharma, what we call it, if they were to, just cure the cancer, then their idea is that there'd be no reason that they would be needed, even though that is horrible logic. People get injured all the time. People get sick all the time. Just because you don't have cancer doesn't mean you're not going to be sick at any given point, right? So they give you a treatment plan, but the treatment plan in itself milks the most money out of you, right? And that's been said for a long time, and people like to lump it up with, oh, it's just a conspiracy. I'm like, no. If you look more into it, that makes a lot of sense. Gaslighting is the biggest thing that I think not only just America, but we'll narrow it down to America. America is amazing at gaslighting. Amazing at gaslighting. And if it looks like a duck, quacks like a duck, smells like a duck, tells you it's a duck, guess what? It's a duck. Man.
Some estimates say food fraud affects at least 1% of the global food industry, at a cost as high as $40 billion a year, according to the Food and Drug Administration.
Grocery manufacturers of America estimated that 10% of the commercially available food in the United States is adulterated. That's 1 in 10. It means if you're not on that 8-item or less checkout line, you've got something in your cart when you leave the supermarket that's probably bogus.
1,000%. I can't say that we didn't know this, bruh. We all knew this. All of us knew this. Everybody, especially the people overseas. Y'all came over to America just for a good time, a vacation, whatever. You took a bite into some of the food and you're like, oh Lord, what is this? What is this? What is this? I'm going back home because I need some real food, bruh. I need some real food. When I saw how real you guys' cheese was, just your cheese, right? I love cheese. Love it. Huge fan. I almost cried. because I thought that the plain fake cheese was something that it was unavoidable wherever you went. But the fact that I now know that the standard is real cheese in a lot of countries outside the US, that to me is incredible. It's the idea that you guys use real cheese on your sandwiches and things like that. To me, the idea is almost foreign because we use fake products all the time here. And I almost expect the products everywhere else I go to be fake. Not to say that other countries don't partake in that to some degree, but not as hardcore as America, bruh.
Here's how and why fake food sits secretly in our kitchen cabinets.
But it's not a secret though, honestly.
According to the FDA, food fraud is considered economically motivated adulteration, or EMA.
It's a monetary impact to the consumer and to the food manufacturers, but it's also a potential public safety, public health impact. It robs us of nutrients and can kill people and has done.
1000%.
Larry Olmsted researched food fraud for years and published his book, Real Food, Fake Food, in 2016.
As I worked on this book, my definition of fake food became anytime what you buy is not what you think you're buying. It doesn't really matter whether it's legal or illegal. It's where you're being tricked.
Like if you buy a box of cereal and it turns out it's not a box of cereal, that's fraud. If you buy an apple and it turns out it's not an apple, fraud. Bro, what? Why would you advertise? False advertising, guys. Like, what? Jeez. The whole, like, food industry in America needs to be completely revamped. Like, you have all these organizations. I feel like they're not even credible. Like, they're not credible at all. Like, what? And then they decide to do something only when there is an uproar. Why is that? Why is it that when there is something chronically huge that can affect the lives of millions of people, and it takes people screaming from every direction, every which way but loose, making viral videos on TikTok, posting viral tweets, exposed videos on YouTube. Why does it take all that to make changes, bro? Why? There's no integrity, bro. That's what it is.
Something that's not
people just want the money, man.
The worst offenders can include seafood, meat, dairy, honey, alcohol, spices.
The fraud happens more with more expensive foods. Totally makes sense, right?
1000%. You think you're buying like, oh, if I buy this like $70 steak, it's got to be real, bro. Like, why would it not be?
Right, there's a higher margin.
Take your extra virgin olive oil as an example. Fraud usually occurs here when a cheaper oil is added to the more expensive oil, and the label still reads 100% extra virgin olive oil. That's food fraud.
Olive oil has been adulterated for thousands of years because it is of high value and it is sought out.
They might flavor it with beta carotene and maybe color it with a little chlorophyll to make it a little more green.
Wow.
And so then you've got a lower quality, cheaper oil.
So both of these olive oils I got at the grocery store, and both of them are the store brand, but one cost way more than the other. This one had a label of 100% Mediterranean blend of extra virgin olive oil. So the olives were sourced from a bunch of different European countries, and it said it was packed in Italy, and there was no expiration date. And when I purchased this one was a 100% California extra virgin olive oil. First pressed, cold pressed, unfiltered, no artificial colors, preservatives, or flavors. And this one had an expiration date. It said that these olives were harvested in October, November 2022, and that it would be good on your shelf until August 2020.
I honestly didn't even know that olive oil had an expiration date. I know that sounds crazy, but I did not know oils in general had expiration dates. Dang. Oh my God. Oh my goodness. Oh God.
And it was much more expensive. Roughly twice as much as this olive oil. And
Wow.
This one had way more information about where this olive oil came from.
Now let's look at the spice market as another one that's vulnerable to fraud. Think of an
1000%.
expensive spice, like saffron. This tiny amount cost me $20 at the
What?
store.
What do they use that for? What do you even use this for?
Saffron can be bulked up with some other material like plant stems and sold as the same, according to the FDA.
That's like buying some green off your dealer and you find out that it's just like basil. It's basil, bruh. It's fake grass, bro.
Popular spices like basil and chili powder from a range of different brands.
Anything that's kind of colored orange, brown, and ground up can be passed off as turmeric.
Wow, true. There's no way that we would ever know. Ignorance is bliss. Ignorance is bliss. How do you know you're getting cheated on unless something comes to light? You know what I mean? Ignorance is bliss, bro. And as long as people can keep doing their dirt behind your back, they'll continue doing it and make a profit off of it. That's what it boils down to.
Bait and switch.
And then there's fish. The FDA says seafood fraud can occur when a less expensive species of fish is substituted for a more expensive species. After all, it's kind of hard to know what fish you're buying, right?
Exactly. We're trusting what we see when we see it. There's no investigation. There's no investigation at all. We go to the store. Our brains are turned off. We have an idea of what we want to get when we go to the grocery store. We have a grocery list of some sort or not. And we go in there. We buy what we need. We get out. We assume we relinquish our trust to the store that we're purchasing the items from. So if we do purchase a squash, a cucumber, or a can of beans, we assume that that is what we're buying, a squash, a cucumber, or a can of beans. We don't ever think that the squash might be something else. We don't ever think that the beans are a conglomerate of a bunch of other chemicals and, other things that actually make the beans something entirely different. It's crazy. Who gets held accountable? No one.
If you're an experienced chef or fishmonger, you can look at like a red snapper fillet and tell whether it's red snapper, but 99% of consumers can't. Most of the fish we eat is whitefish. Yep. Every fillet looks pretty much the same, which is why there's so much substitution.
Bro, all those fish are just beefed up tilapias, man. If it's a white fish, it's all tilapia. All of it's tilapia. Even the cod.
FDA is mandated by law to inspect 2% of the import.
2%? That's why most of the food fake, bro.
Seafood, which is, I think, a very, very low bar.
At least 2% and you're good. That means you're allowed to sell fake food here. That's the issue. Therein lies the problem. The problem is we're allowed to sell fake food here. You're only required to inspect 2% of the imported meat. What does that mean? That means you are allowed to sell fake food, bro.
In fact, the U.S. imports as much as 85% of its fish.
But federal fisheries enforcement is serious business. Agents...
It's not. It's honestly not. With what they're required to inspect, that's a joke.
It's from NOAA and U.S. Customs tear open a container filled with frozen fish from Thailand. They're looking for fraud.
First, it's important to understand the matrix that food fraud lives in. There's intentional and unintentional types of food risk. Unintentional risks include food safety and quality, like accidental foodborne illnesses.
CDC estimates about 50 million people a year contract a foodborne illness. Only 20%, 1 in 5 of those, can be identified. So there's 40 million people a year getting sick from something they ate that we don't know what it is, and a good guess would be that fraud has something to do with that.
Then there's intentional. That's where food fraud is alongside food defense. The difference is fraud is motivated by economic gain, and defense is motivated by harm.
If you have a ton of coffee and you can turn that into 1.2 tons by adding some cheap filler to it, you've just increased your profits by 20%. And a lot of these products pass through a lot of hands. They go from small growers to big trucks to tankers to boats to processing plants. It's not necessarily like this big company that's selling you coffee that's ripping you off. It can happen in a lot of ways along the way.
And then, of course, it's everyone's process. In everyone's process, they try to make it more efficient by cutting out maybe some practices that would verify that the product that they're producing would be authentic, right? But it's like, it's too time consuming. Let's cut it down, do this instead. Let's substitute it with this. We save more money doing it this way. And when you hand it off to the next person in the process for, said product that is going to be eventually distributed to the public, they trust that the previous person that they received this product from did their job, and all they got to do is slap a sticker on it, put it on a shelf, and boom. So it's not that there is one centralized area for this fake food controversy. It's happening on all fronts. That's the problem.
Even the FDA says it can't estimate how often this fraud happens or its economic impact. Over the last 10 years, the most common fraud committed is lying about an animal's origin and dilution or substitution, both ranking at 16% of incidents recorded. Dilution and substitution are exactly what they sound like. Perhaps somewhere along the supply chain, the real expensive process of refining something like fresh olives is ignored. Maybe a little canola oil is added instead. Then there's the removal of value, when an ingredient or part of a food is intentionally left out, taken out, or substituted altogether. And that substitute can be a non-food substance. That's the 14% of the recorded food fraud incidents using non-food substances.
The pandemic has given us a chance to focus on supply chains and forced us to.
For example, during the pandemic, labeling fraud really spiked in 2021 to 21% of the types of fraud that were committed and recorded.
If we knew all about it, why hasn't it been solved? The key was we weren't focusing on prevention. Food fraud prevention, if we do it right, is boring. We're the fire marshal checking exits and smoke alarms, not catching the bad guys.
The U.S. has laws in place to ensure food safety. That's part of what the FDA does today.
Basically, all food fraud, all product fraud is illegal under one law or another, somehow.
Before the FDA existed, manufacturers could add basically whatever they wanted into the food.
And they literally do now. they still do it, bro. They still do it now. The difference is they kind of bob and weave a little bit, and everyone has their hand in the pot. No one's holding them accountable. So what we're consuming is not what we're consuming, at least in America. Other places probably, but in America for sure, what we're consuming is not what we're consuming, which is why I opened up the video with the vegan issue. A lot of people are like, I only eat vegan this, vegan chicken, I only eat vegan chicken or vegan steak, and da-da-da. And in my head, I'm like, what if the ingredients on that box were wrong? What if there was a meat product inside of a vegan substitute? That's not the most unlikely thing, considering how reliable our systems are in America. Just saying. I use that because people are very particular about what they ingest, especially when it comes to vegans and stuff like that, and what they will and won't eat. So I'm like, do you really trust those boxes of food you purchase that you got off a shelf here in the States? Yeah, interesting. Because I'd venture to say some of the products you get definitely have a product in them that or they have products in them that they did not put on the label, which is even crazier. Because, what then? Bro.
Think of Upton Sinclair's The Jungle. That book was published in 1906. That same year, food safety regulation began with the Meat Inspection Act and the Pure Food and Drugs Act, which outlawed adulterated and misbranded food items.
To protect consumers,
this ultimately led to the creation of the FDA.
the Food and Drug Administration and the...
Since then, laws have hit the books to further food safety protocols, like the Food Safety Modernization Act signed into law in 2011.
And then horse meat hit.
The fraud was on a grand scale.
Horse meat was blended into beef in the UK, across Europe.
Horse meat, bro. That is wild. I've never had horse before. They do look good, though. I ain't gonna lie. Chomp, chomp. Damn.
Sold to unsuspecting supermarkets for a period of 8 months in 2012.
That's wild.
And that was great wake-up call.
Some companies purposely mislead on labels.
Yep.
Prosecuting the fraudsters committing the crime can be tricky. After all, they're purposely trying to avoid that detection. But criminals are caught. Like in 2016.
Product labeled Market Pantry 100% Parmesan contained cheaper Swiss and cheddar cheese.
Cheaper Swiss and cheddar cheese to replicate the taste of Parmesan cheese, bro. It's like the older I get and the more stuff I find out, man, you lose faith in humanity day by day, man, day by day. Bro, man, come on. We're just trying to mind our business and do our thing, bro. Why is it like this?
Organic filler called cellulose.
Why is it like
which
this?
Can be derived from wood pulp.
Castle Cheese was caught adding wood pulp and cheddar to its grated Parmesan that they sold as 100% Parmesan cheese.
The FDA does allow fillers like cellulose in cheese, but it can only make up 4% of the total ingredients.
The president of the company got a $5,000 fine, 200 hours of community service.
A $5,000 fine, bro. That's it. That's it. 200 hours of community. You might as well let the man walk free. That's nothing. This guy's made billions of dollars off of the Parmesan industry. What? Billions might be an exaggeration, or maybe it's not, but definitely millions. $5,000. What? Get out of here with that, man.
And 3 years of probation.
For its part, the Food and Drug Administration says its job is to make sure food doesn't hurt you, not to police the labels.
Fraud is tough for the consumer in terms of food because it's difficult. They don't have a lab in their kitchen.
The Food Fraud Prevention Think Tank has a 5-question survey consumers can use when shopping for food. 1. What type of product is it?
Be aware of product that you put on you, in you, or plug in the wall.
2. Quality. Can you recognize the difference between the products? If you can't easily tell the difference, that makes you more vulnerable to fraud.
True.
If I drink scotch, I couldn't tell you if it's a difference between a $50 bottle and a $5,000 bottle.
Amen, bro. Amen. I can't tell.
So I know I could be deceived at that point.
3. Supplier. Do you know the retailer or the supplier? And do you trust them?
So when you turn that box of cereal or bottle of juice over and read back, there's a lot of information there that's required by law that's helpful to the consumer.
And then question 4. Are you buying this item online? The supply chain can be shrouded in more mystery when shopping online. So how did you find out about this website? Is it reputable?
But it depends on how you find that supplier.
And finally 5. Complain. Okay, it's not a question, but the Food Fraud Prevention Think Tank says if the retailer is legit, they will want to know.
I think manufacturers can be the victims as well.
The FDA also relies on consumers' reports.
In recent decades, fraudsters have gotten more sophisticated in the techniques they use to fake the food products. And that means that our detection methods and our test methods and standards have to be better at detecting fraud.
That's why the U.S. Pharmacopoeia Convention provides a framework for organizations to detect its vulnerabilities.
We have food fraud mitigation guidance, so it is a supply chain risk management tool to really take a look at which ones are the more risky products suspected to be adulterated.
Sometimes it feels like this is not that big of a deal. But the more fraudsters are able to achieve, the more we end up paying in the end as consumers.
These cases rarely result in criminal penalties. If you want to be like a drug dealer and import heroin and you get arrested on a large scale, you're going to go to jail. But if you can make $80 million importing adulterated honey and then you're going to get a slap on the wrist and some fines, why wouldn't you do food instead of drugs if there's no basically criminal downside to it? So as long as we don't take it seriously, why should the perpetrators take it seriously?
What we want is the food industry just to be focused on making food and not have to worry about looking over our shoulder, checking different suppliers. And that's going to impact more food being produced, better food, safer food, less expensive food. There's plenty of things for us to worry about in the world today, and food fraud should not be one of those.
Damn, bro. Well, what do y'all think? I knew that was a thing. To some scale, I didn't know the depth of how fraudulent the food was in America, but I knew that it definitely existed on a relatively large scale. Didn't have anything to back it up. I just had a gut feeling, bro. Just a gut feeling. What do y'all think? And for the people that are from overseas that subscribe to this channel, what do you guys think about